before I jump into this video, I do want to share that this is a very specific way of practicing interpretation as it pertains to career. And I want to be clear that when you're looking into a chart, you have to know what you're looking for. You could do a whole chart about someone's relationships using how all of the areas of their houses could impact their relationships. You could focus on someone's chart about their ability to cope with certain difficulties in life and look at all of the houses to see how it can impact them, right? So even though houses and certain points in the chart all have a specific definition, we also sometimes can get really, really granular and use two specific placements or use two specific points in the chart to make some clear distinctions. So my approach is a little bit unique in how I'm going to talk about career today, but I want us to look at astrology sometimes as a connecting factor, and that if our ascendant sign and our chart ruler is an important planet, and some of us have a lot of questions about our career, it is important for us to look at both. So I do suggest you look at the planet that rules your chart. I also suggest in this video you look at the planet that rules your midheaven. And I also suggest any other significant planets in your chart, your decan ruler, your sun ruler, whatever the case may be, to look into that as well. So this is meant to be flexible. This is meant for you to basically choose your own adventure, click on what seems interesting, and draw some connections to your own chart. Hey, it's Amethyst Virgo. I'm here with a new video. Today we're talking about career. So I'm trying to do this in a very useful way. And instead of just listing a bunch of things out, I want us to really understand the planet behind the sign. So when we're thinking of career, we first usually start off, of course, we always want to look at how someone makes their money. The second house, their attitude towards money. Second house. The sixth house, what does this person want or need their everyday life to be like? Their work environment, their work ethic, like the more minute work ethic. Then we see the achievement and the fortitude to have a work ethic to get what you want is more the 10th house. And I do have videos tailored to the 2nd, 6th, 10th houses if you want to check those out. So this video is not going to be about those in particular, but what I want to do is help other people understand a little bit more with interpretation. So when you're interpreting a birth chart, you don't just want to look at one particular part of the person's energy. You have to look at everything. That's why sometimes it's hard when people want just one answer and they're not providing any answers, right? Like you can't say like, what am I supposed to do with my life? And it's like, well, what do you want to do? Because honestly, I personally feel like most people can achieve some part of their dream. Some part, let's be realistic, some part. Maybe we can't do everything we've dreamed of, but we can do some part of it. But the chart is going to help us see how difficult is it for you to get to a certain career. So I don't like to tell people like, no, you can't do that career because your midheaven says this. Like I like to look at it like, well, look, this midheaven needs this. This is where you're going to be seen in the best light. Because remember, your midheaven is your public image. And so no matter what we do, that's going to be a part of what people see of us. The world is going to be more attuned to that version of ourselves in terms of our achievement, right? And we know the ascendant sign. So I want to work through the ascendant and midheaven in particular today. Now, would I only work with that in a birth chart reading? No. Birth chart reading, we're going through everything. But the ascendant is also important because it is our, check out the video I did for Ascendant, the recent one. It is our mode of responsiveness to life. It is on the cusp of the first house. That is Mars house, right? And so we have to look at it in two ways. Of course, you can look at the Ascendant as how people perceive us. And I know some people think that's too surface level, but that is realistic. Because remember, if Mars is action, Mars is what we see people doing. Right? We make a lot of assumptions based off someone's rising or someone's modes of action, but that is not who they truly are all the way through. So a part of that is, as I've said before, is my belief in that you are treated like you're rising. Like a lot of times you are treated or you get the experiences of your rising sign, even if your sun sign traits are something different. So I view myself as my sun. I'm conscious of that. But in life, this is how I've just kind of been, responding or having to react to life. So that is how, and I have videos, I'm not going to talk all about that right now. So I want to talk about the ascendant sign in particular and also talk about the midheaven. Now, of course, how you can use this video, you can use it to, I would go through maybe any planet that's important on your chart. Any planet that's important, but this is specifically for understanding how our ascendant sign can also help us find our career, but predominantly we know the midheaven is going to be that important part. And lastly, any planet that's important to your chart, check it out. Maybe you're a very, very Mercurian person. And so you might want to look at where Mercury is in your chart to help understand as well. So again, this video, I'm doing it in a very different way that I haven't really seen done as much online before. Okay, so my suggestion of using this, just go through the planets and see what resonates, okay? So jumping into this, I want to talk about the fact that when we're thinking of planets, we have to understand it rules the sign. And a lot of times people will get caught up in wanting to act like, like you can tell because we start talking about the sign and we start talking about the signs as only people and not understanding, but behind that sign is the planet. And if I understand the planet really well, not only will I understand transits, but I also will understand why that person is reacting in that way. Instead of being upset, I can then make some connections. So for example, let's say you have a chart, your chart ruler is Mercury, there is some theme there dealing with ideas. And if I'm looking up, it's because I'm looking up on my computer screen. I already typed up some notes. So I wanted to say, like, your first instinct, let's say if you're a Virgo rising or a Gemini rising, is to gather the facts first before acting. So you might be a person who wants to work somewhere in research. Now, what type of research you do and what you're going to be known for is going to depend on maybe other parts in the chart, of course, and whatever your midheaven, what you're going to be seen or noticed for, right? You have some people who are good with, maybe you would have somebody who is an interviewer. So maybe they have a placement in they have a planet near their midheaven. Maybe they're the sun near the midheaven. And maybe they're an interviewer of celebrities or something like that. You get what I'm saying? So because if you're a Virgo or Gemini rising, you're going to like information. And again, Gemini and Virgo do it for different reasons. Gemini is collecting, right? Virgo is making sense of it. Virgo is categorizing the information to see, like, where does it go? How do I apply this earth energy? And Gemini is more of that more social or that more curiosity part of information in Mercury, right? So that's important to think of. Now, let me give some examples here. So even when we're thinking of like energy that has like a lot of mutability, Virgo and Gemini energy or Mercury energy in the chart, we're going to be dealing with people who also want to give information. A lot of times you'll see Gemini energy people like being educators or teachers or in some way, shape, or form. It also, again, you can look at different parts of your chart. For instance, I have Gemini intercepted in my 10th house, and my chart ruler is Mercury. I'm a first decan Virgo, and I have 2 serious planets in my 3rd house, and I have my North Node in the 9th house. So there's many things going on in my chart making it more likely for me to be an educator, right? But at the same time, Mercury energy does well with any type of categorization as well. So you could even see a person with Virgo energy who is in some way editing, right? Do you see the difference in the flow between Gemini and Virgo? Gemini can be let's get the information rolling, and Virgo is let's make sure it's right, and let's make sure it's the right stuff, right? Let's put it in a certain way, organization system. So for example, again, I mentioned teacher, educator for Mercury energy, research, even in some ways, like you can have people who are Mercurian who are really good at banking, right? Because remember, banking requires you to have to organize and understand the flow of the money coming in. And so even traditionally in astrology, Mercury had much more role in commerce, in trade, much more of a role in those, and even money, the categorizing or controlling the flow of money. So that's something also to keep in mind. Cashier, right? Even, okay? Because remember, especially more of a Virgoan situation. Maybe if it's a person who does also want to be a manager at some point, right? So there's so many different ways it can show up in the chart. But we want to look at the fact that Mercury is dealing with either information systems, delivering information, teaching information, having to organize, explain, break down, assist, curate something. An auditor might be very Mercurian in nature, right? Because they have to take something and understand fully what's going on all the way through. So again, Mercury can be anything that requires you to utilize your mind to either gather, assimilate, or organize the information. You can have journalism. Let me give an example as well. You can have journalism, you can have people that are involved in somehow media, communications, things like that. And again, you would have to look at your chart to see all of these different parts of how this could work together. Now, let me give an example. Madonna has a Virgo rising moon in 1st house. And a lot of times people don't think of Madonna as a Virgo moon, Virgo rising, but she is. She's Virgo rising and moon, according to the chart, the time that most people use for her. and I believe which is verified, and she's a Leo. But all that Virgo energy in her chart, she is someone who is, it's mutable. So she also has a Gemini in midheaven. So if you think about Madonna and you think about mutable energy, Madonna has always kind of been reinventing her image, reinventing herself over the years, adjusting with the times. And I know sometimes when people get older, celebrities or entertainers, people are like, stay in your lane. But as you can see, Madonna's kind of like, and she's got that Leo energy, because remember, Leo and is kind of like very kid at heart energy. So she does kind of try to keep up with the trends or keep up with the times type of thing. But also what you'll notice with Madonna, again, it's just talking about who has the best astrology for this example. She has been someone who is very introspective in terms of even like what she believes in. So remember, she's like has a lot of spiritual beliefs. She's been moving into a lot of different different ways of thinking over the course of her life. And I do think, like, she does a lot of antics that she does. There's a lot of extra things that she does. But you do see here, even with Gemini being her midheaven, she was a voice of her generation in terms of just like women having a voice in terms of expressing their sexuality. So understanding that Madonna really put that out there, right? And her moon being in the first house is very fitting for this idea of like body consciousness, but also the feminine power of that. So that's interesting. Also, Steve Jobs was a Virgo ascendant with a Gemini midheaven. Now, this part of the video is not just for Virgo ascendants, Gemini midheavens. I'm just happen to have these two people as examples. And so Steve Jobs was a Virgo ascendant, 22nd degree. So that gives more of a serious nature to the Virgo in terms of being more industrious, less minute, and more very technical, but also trying to lead to some type of outcome. And a Gemini midheaven as well. Remember Steve Jobs leading Apple, remember, mutable. He had to keep coming up with new ideas for Apple to be seen as a leader in the technology, business. So that's one thing to think about when we're looking at astrology. It's understanding what it does, what planet rules that sign, what does it really do, instead of just looking at it as, we're not looking at Steve Jobs as a Gemini because of his midheaven. We're looking at the energy of Gemini. We're looking at Mercury ruling Gemini. And what does that mean? That meant that he was seen and noticed for his communication, his contribution to communication in terms of Apple. So the moon, we have to understand the moon, the core necessary function is to nurture. Now, we also think of it mainly literally in terms of nurturing a child or, someone that you care about, but the moon is nurturing whatever it cares about. So, fields where people need to trust you. So if you have moon conjuncts, midheaven, 10th house, if you're a Cancer rising, I've seen a lot of Cancer risings be seen as people who care. Now, again, do they care or not? That depends on the person. But I've seen the ones I know, yes. But because I remember some people overly get assigned to their rising, and it's like, but wait, there's other parts of them, and so that makes things a little bit more complex. But with the the moon's influence on your first house ascendant, you need to be your mode of looking into life is you're never going to want to do something that does not really have a certain level of sentimental value to you. Okay, and that can mean anything. It doesn't even have to mean, it could be a person, it could be an athlete who wants to stay with the same team his whole career or her whole career, right? So the moon doesn't have to just mean about this kind of home-based stuff, but we do have to understand the moon is associated with home. It's associating with caring about what belongs to you, where you come from. So remember that Cancerian energy, let's say if it's the Cancer rising, is protecting home. And again, that can be figuratively or literally. It's in a less stern way than the Capricorn, but you can see Cancer energy be concerned with security. Okay, it'd be so interesting to see the people who've invented the security, any security systems or any inventions that deal with security having some type of Cancer or Capricorn nature to them, because that's about protection of home and family. Also with moon energy, we're dealing with healers, right? Nurse practitioners. Now, would I say surgeon? No, I would keep surgeon for something more intense like Pluto. But the nurse aspect of it is more of that. Sometimes, I'm all the time, right? You're going to connect to the nurse before you connect to the doctor. So the having bedside manner, being able to get an understanding of how someone's feeling is often a nurse's job first and foremost, right? And so just a lot of respect for nurses. I feel like sometimes, again, I know that there's a different perception of nurse versus doctor, but I'm like, my mom was a nurse for decades, and just like there's a lot of work that goes into nursing. And so you have to have you should. Now, are all nurses caring and nurturing? Not necessarily. But if you're good at your job, yes, you sometimes have to keep the facts, because it's medical, right? But at the same time, if someone needs your sympathy or your empathy, or you are showing care for the patient who's in a vulnerable state, it's a very moon-like thing. Now, what you can sometimes see also with moon energy, let's say if someone has moon conjunct midheaven, or midheaven in Cancer or something like that. Another way people can make money, if it's not just at home, could be I've seen a lot of Cancer energy people be really good at being actors and actresses, because they're able to channel the emotions. Actors have to channel emotion, and that is also that cardinal energy. So you'll sometimes see that through people who are working with the emotions, or they're working with something that requires them to really dig deep in what they care about. If you have like Cancer, right? I'm not Cancer, I'm sorry. Any prominent Cancer energy, but like even like the Cancer midheaven, right? You're going to be seen through that way. So sometimes I'll tell people with Cancer energy at the top of the chart, you need to work with other people's emotions. Like, even if you don't view yourself as a very emotional person, you somehow need to find a way to adapt and work to how other people are feeling. You might actually have a good skill with that. There are many people who struggle to really understand and internalize their own emotions, but they're able to give a lot of sympathy, empathy, and support to others. So that's something to keep in mind. Real estate, I've heard as well, being pretty good for moon energy, more so because it's associated with home. And so that person tends to care a little bit more about now there is a business aspect as well to the moon. A lot of times we talk more about the moon just from a sentimental point of view, but even traditionally, some people would say that the moon in the 10th house was considered to be favorable. Now, in modern context, sometimes I have seen some people with moon in the 10th house be work for their family, work with their family, or in some way work from home, or want to work from home in a comfortable space or environment or something like that. But the moon can be really great when it comes to being able to achieve what you truly feel inside, right? Because when we see sun energy, sometimes we're just trying to, we want acknowledgement, we want to be seen, right? But with the moon, it becomes more of an emotional appeal. And so the moon, you'll see a lot of people even with restaurants. You can see people be good businesses that cater, a bed and breakfast type of thing, right? So like moon energy is like working with something that makes other people comfortable, right? Like whether that is hospitality, hospital, medical field, whether that is, real estate, whether that is acting, because you want other people to, feel your emotions, whatever it is, that's what you tend to see here. And let me give you another example of someone. So someone, a famous person, I think I've talked about his chart before. And again, when I choose celebrities, I'm talking about whose chart just makes sense at the time. Chris Brown has his sun, moon, and his midheaven in Taurus. We know that Taurus is known for this level of, the singing, music, Taurus, right? Because Taurus typically can have that calming effect. So with Chris Brown, we're noticing that is the way in which he makes his money as well, right? Through being a music artist, right? And so that's one way to see it in a range of different ways, of which this is someone who has been able to channel their emotions more so in their career. Because his moon is not at the bottom of the chart where he's really dealt with a lot of his emotional experiences and his emotions. You see Chris Brown as, people like, yeah, he's talented. He's had a lot of just, serious run-ins on the law, right? With like the domestic abuse, having to take anger management classes. There's been some accusations against him. There's been a lot of things throughout the years. I haven't heard anything really about him lately, but that's just something just to keep in mind of how Chris Brown's, all his energy at the top of the chart is like he's public, right? He's public and he's seen, and he's utilizing his sun energy, his traits of trying to be resourceful in terms of continuing to build up on his his career musically, but also his emotions are at the top of the chart, which makes it a little bit harder to fully gauge them as you would when you get to the bottom of the chart, where the moon originates, we know, from the 4th house. And has just in the general, if your moon is in the bottom part of the chart, there's a different level of awareness typically of emotions. Now, lastly, let's move into, not lastly at all. So we're going to move into Jupiter. So we're dealing with Jupiter. So Jupiter, the planet, justice, truth, risk-taking, luck, optimism, quests, things like that is Jupiter. Now, we have to understand that the planet then creates the sign, right? Like if we look at it like that, right? The planet creates the sign. So then Sagittarius is the person embodied through that Jupiter energy. It is how does the person now navigate through life, right? But Jupiter is giving that planet life. Jupiter is feeding that energy to that planet. And since it manifests into a person, you get what I'm saying? How that's different. We're not Jupiter, right? But Jupiter is ruling that sign, right? So it's causing that effect in that person. So to understand the sign, we have to understand that if you have Jupiter, let's back it up. Jupiter, first house ascendant. Well, you are someone who will probably want to experience life in a range of ways. Experience is going to be the key to you understanding yourself. So you are kind of on a journey of trying to figure out what you believe, who you are, and cementing that as a part of your identity. And you will be very intrigued by other people. You may dibble and dabble in many things if you have a Sagittarius ascendant, finding that truth. Now, the degree and the other aspects of the ascendant are going to help us see how firm are you in your beliefs. Are you a roamer? Or are you someone who knows what you want? Now, what we want to say here with Jupiter types of Jupiter's influence on Sagittarius, and then looking more at like, okay, what was the potential for the career? What's the theme here? Well, what you can typically see is someone who seeks higher and when it adds their experiences. So sometimes you can see a person who moves around a lot in terms of their career, especially if we put Sag in the midheaven. I've told this to a lot of Sag midheavens. Now you need to always be doing something that is going to help you grow. So if you're a Sagittarius ascendant, if you're a Sagittarius midheaven, if Jupiter is a prominent placement in your chart, maybe you have Jupiter in the 9th house, if Jupiter's your sub-ruling planet, whatever, you need to always be trying to be growing in experiences. You should now know something more than you did 2 years ago. You should now be on this excursion, or you should be now adding this. If an opportunity comes up at work, hey, we need 3 people to go travel to such and such, you might want to do that. It matches the energy you already have. But Jupiter is also known for influence, right? So when we're thinking of social influence is what I like to sometimes say, like you can get with the influence. Venus is more that personal influence. And we can get social influence because Jupiter is able to spread awareness. And again, I think that Jupiter and Venus both have a good layer of being able to attract people, but Jupiter is more of the ideology. It's not the attraction to you as a person or the attraction to you or the likability that you sometimes see just with Venus. So with Jupiter, sometimes you can see a person who's more into politics. Ideally, if you are a politician, well, we know there's so much, it's very divided, especially in American politics, which party you're part of, whatever. But ideally, you would have a person who can appeal to different types of people, right? Sagittarius is more tuned into variety, to multiculturalism, to things of that nature. So Sagittarius energy, typically, you could see a person who's a Sagittarius politician or a person who's Sagittarius in their chart, and they're able to really connect to different types of people through trying to help everyone have the same idea, come together, but at the same time understanding what other people's value systems or other people's cultural experiences are as well. Travel can be really huge for people who have heavy Sag in the chart. It could be like a traveling nurse. So that's why I say with astrology, I don't want to always just say, you should do this. Because if a person wants to be a nurse and they're looking at their chart like, oh man, all I have is Sag. I have a lot of Sag in my chart. I have a lot of mutable energy in my chart. But it's like, but wait, there's other ways to use the energy of the planet to help you meet that goal. That's why I don't like the very black and white of this is what you need to do for career because of your midheaven. Like we have to look at your whole chart. Eventually, this is a starting point though. Now you can sometimes see teachers here, people who have heavy Sag in the chart or Jupiter energy in the chart that want to be teachers. The difference here sometimes is you can do better with typically higher learning, whether that's college, teaching people, more so training people, things of that nature, because it requires like a higher level, or you have to deal with like more of an advanced mindset. It's less concrete than like a Mercurian 3rd house energy, which is more around formal education, right? Elementary school, when you're young, what you are being exposed to and being taught is kind of foundational ways of thinking. And that's important. It's important to know how to do the how to understand, how we often have a foundation for learning, or we're not going to be able to understand each other. But then when you go to the Jupiter energy, Sagittarius energy, ninth house energy, your midheaven being up there as well, anything Sag related, we're now dealing with this level of higher thinking. And now people have to make their own meaning of things. So if you're trying to be a teacher and you're thinking of which age to go, maybe look at your third and look at your ninth houses. But if we're thinking about the midheaven in particular with Sagittarius, you are going to be noticing that you have to find a purpose in something that you care deeply about. Now, that can be whatever it is that makes you feel a certain level of dedication. It's almost like Sagittarius. It's like, I feel obligated to tell the truth about this. And for some people, it is going to be something that is with justice system. Some people, it's going to be, hey, I want to be a translator. I want to help people make a sense of things and be able to come together. Because remember, Jupiter at the end of the day is literally trying to expand and influence. So Jupiter being a prominent part of anyone's chart is going to be about, you want to spread your impact. And sometimes that's why we will see international travel, we'll see foreign business, we'll see global types of themes with Jupiter, is because of that. So if you're a Sagittarius Ascendant, you're Sagittarius Sun even, thinking of how you can still have an impact, finding something that you really care about, having more people have access to. I want people to think and understand how important it is to care about their environment. I don't know, right? Sagittarius is usually a little bit more about like law or like morals or things like that, or people who are like, they work for, immigrant rights or something of that nature, things of that nature. So, all right, so Jupiter in Scorpio, let me give an example. So when I said investor, let me say investor, Jupiter can be good with risk taking. So let's say, now, is every Jupiter placement going to be good with banking? No. But what you could have a person who's an investor and maybe they have Jupiter in Scorpio and they're able to kind of spread awareness for the importance of being able to be really intricate and in depth and complex with how you make your money. Now, Venus. So when you have Venus, let's back it up. So Venus rules 2 signs, right? So we're dealing here with Libra or Taurus. And depending on which one is your ascendant sign, is going to help us see what your kind of mode or operations are in terms of how you live your life, your approach, how you're even viewed. Because you can look at it like a Libra rising person, you are going to typically attract or draw people in who are comfortable around you, who feel a sense of calm around you, who are interested in partnering with you. And by partnering, it doesn't have to mean romantically, of course. And with Taurus, we have a person who is seen as reliable, who's seen as steady. That's hard for a person who's not really that, but they have had to kind of be that person. A lot of times you can have a Taurus rising person who feels stuck in that mode for a while. It's good because you're consistent and you can probably even make a good earning for yourself and people trust in you. But maybe you're really maybe you're really a sun in Sag and you have all these other placements showing you really just want to be free, but you keep feeling like, wow, I have to be responsible. I have to, life keeps asking me to slow down, but I don't want to. So there can be some struggle there. But with Venus, we are always going to be thinking of this level of trying to make something more pleasant, trying to make something more cordial, trying to make something more beautiful. Venus is about trying to make something more compatible, trying to make something merge together, trying to make something more relaxing, more inviting, right? So again, I said a bunch of things, but again, we could talk, you could probably pick out what I'm saying about Libra versus Taurus, right? And so with Venus, so let's say a person is like, well, wait, Venus is conjunct my ascendant. Okay, well, great. So that helps us understand a part of your identity and who you are. Well, how does that influence your midheaven, right? Again, if you're on this video, go to the planets that rule your ascendant and go to the planets that rule your midheaven, or any of the planets that seem interesting to you. So let me toss out some ideas for a career in terms of if you're a Venus person, right? Just some ideas. You could see a person who's interested in some type of, again, making something look better, whether that's fashion, whether that's interior design, whether that is being someone who is in some way responsible for the look of something, even a wedding planner maybe, especially on this, likes to plan out things that have a certain level of taste and sophistication to them. But Libra also likes to see people come together. So you could see people who are interested in that type of like relationship type of dynamics be involved in that as well. Restaurants, right? You could see restaurant business be more of a Taurus thing. What I said before, I made a video. Did I make the video? Yeah, Candy. I talked about Candy Burris and how she's a Taurus. Not only is she a singer, but she also has some businesses. So that's Taurus is good at building something up and keeping it. That's the strength of Taurus that I think a lot of people forget when they talk about the sign, because people are like really obsessed with certain signs, and it's like, but wait, you have a sign that keeps things steady, that keeps something for a long time, or someone who can actually make something successful. So that's something to keep in mind. Now I know, like her example, she's had a great career. I know there's been some issues with the restaurants that her and Todd have, but anyway, let me give another example. Let me move on. A coach, any type of like relationship coach, though, lifestyle coach. I'm pretty, people who probably are influencers probably have some healthy dose of Venus energy somewhere in their chart. Maybe they're not a Taurus or Libra. Maybe they have Venus in the first house. Maybe they have Venus in the fifth house. Maybe they have Venus conjunct the midheaven or something like that. So one way to look at it is like, let me give an example. So of someone with a Taurus midheaven. So Anthony Bourdain, who we know, is no longer with us, but Anthony Bourdain was a Leo rising. So he was going to be seen and noticed no matter what. So a lot of people are like, wait, there's a lot of people who could be, people who travel and who critique food, but he is a Leo rising. So when you have a Leo rising, of course, there's going to be more attention to you, or you're going to have more, you're going to be more in the limelight. That's not a problem for other people, because some people don't want to be in the limelight, right? But the Taurus midheaven, remember what I said, Taurus is about comfort. Taurus is about storing up, if you think about it, right? And so Taurus is about storing, right? Holding on to what you have. And that can be related to food. That can be related to a lot of things. But he was known for his commentary on food, right? He was known. So his midheaven was something that he probably enjoyed doing, right? Who doesn't like eating, right? So he probably enjoyed it, but he got seen for it as well, because his Leo rising is like, he was going to get attention no matter what for what it is that he was doing, whether he decided to, I don't know, collect some type of item, whether he decided to do something else in life, he probably was going to be seen either way. And so what also was interesting is he had Venus in Gemini, right? So Venus in Gemini, thinking about whatever you love, he was talking about, right? The things that he enjoyed. And it wasn't just about eating. It was like, he liked critiquing it, and he liked understanding like the different cultures and the different ways in which they did things, which aligns well with Gemini as well as being curious. So that's just something I found interesting. Now he did have his Pluto square Saturn, which does represent a level of obviously, being, the fatal way in which he ended his life. And sometimes Pluto square Saturn can be a person that finds life quite difficult. Now, before I want to warn people, if you haven't gotten your chart interpreted, please don't worry about certain placements unless you've experienced something directly. I say that because a lot of times people freak out. If you're young, live your life before you think something caused you to freak out. Sometimes people prematurely start to worry about something that's not even a part of you, because you can have a really good aspected planet, even though Pluto is square Saturn, and it doesn't affect you the way it might someone else. Another example I found interesting was Kylie Jenner, who is a Libra midheaven. And remember, she had, I don't know if she still has it, I'm assuming she may, a cosmetic line. And so her fame is connected to her family as well. And she also has a moon in Scorpio, the 10th house, all right? And so that's important. It's important because I'm like, okay, her 10th house, she has this, she has a moon, so she has Libra, right? So she has Libra, as the midheaven, and then in her 10th house, she's the moon in Scorpio. And so Kris Jenner is a Scorpio moon, mother energy. So Kylie Jenner's chart literally shows a lot of why she is successful. Family association, the moon, right? The moon being in the 10th house of your association, of your goals and achievements are connected to her family influence. Scorpio, influence, power, right? Given, right? But also her Libra midheaven means like she is into beauty, she is into cosmetics, she is into, so she'll probably still continue to be doing certain things. I heard she was revamping her line or something. But with Mars, you have to take action. You have to be comfortable reacting and responding to life. So if you're a Scorpio rising, I've said before, Scorpio risings tend to have a lot to do with responding to life's chaos, crisis, always feeling like you're the one that has to pull through, or you're the one that has to be strong for everyone else, or you just had a life that required you to understand a lot of deep, intense things at an early age. And so that's really what we see with Scorpio, this intense understanding of self, right? With Aries as the ascendant, we get more of the impulsive nature of Mars in terms of wanting to act and wanting to do in self-interest more so, not as much in response to events that have happened like Scorpio. So either way, the instinct is there. Mars is the ruler of the first house. So if you have a Scorpio or Aries rising, it's pretty much probably a very strong energy that you feel. Now, if we are thinking about they have to take action, you have to be comfortable reacting. So if you have Mars as a prominent placement, let's say a person is like, well, I have a Scorpio midheaven, or I have an Aries midheaven, or I have Mars conjunct my midheaven. You have to be comfortable seizing the day and just doing what needs to be done. It doesn't mean you don't think before you act, but it means you have to be brave in some way, or you have to kind of do something that other people are not doing. Let me give an example. An athletic coach, you have to know on the spot what you're going to tell someone to do, right? You have to be reactive. That is the beauty, I think, of Mars energy, reactive. I know a lot of times Aries gets flack because Aries can be a bit impulsive, single-minded, not thinking things through type of energy. Some Aries individuals especially can be too much with that. But at its best, Mars is able to do that. Mars is able to respond to something and get it moving, not be afraid. Politics, sometimes you'll see Mars energy also be associated with politics. For example, you have George W. Bush, who's a Leo rising, Aries midheaven, okay? So I'm not going to go into a full interpretation there, but that's an example. Law enforcement, corrections officer, someone who is a CEO, an entrepreneur, like all of these things require you to act. And again, maybe you're someone like, wait, I don't want to do any of that. Well, maybe, I know someone one time that was an EMT. They had heavy, I don't remember the exact places, but they had some type of heavy Mars energy. It might have been Mars and Aries, but it wasn't in the 10th house. But do you see what I'm saying? Right? You have to be reactive and responsive. So going into fields and careers that help with that. Let me give an example, or even like let's say an example. A CEO of a woman's brand, whatever that is. So maybe this is a woman who has, and again, you could be a CEO of any gender, but let's say it's a woman. Let's just say it's a woman. What if she has a Cancer Ascendant and she has an Aries midheaven? Now, one, those are square. So the astrologer would have to talk about that square, but Cancer Ascendant, she's going through life, this is something she cares about. So she's already reactive to what it is that she cares about, or she's seen as someone that cares a lot about something. And then she has the Aries midheaven, but she's going for her goals. She wants to create this business, this brand, right? Based off what she cares about. That's an example there of how that can look, right? Another example is, let me see another example. Jackie Kennedy had a Scorpio rising, conjunct her South Node. You could say that, with her husband being assassinated, that I don't want to make that her whole life. I want to be careful of not saying that someone's trauma is their whole life, but I do think that that is probably one of many things that she's had to cope and deal with, unfortunately. And Leo midheaven, obviously Leo midheavens are typically going to be seen for something. Now, for some people it could be good, some people it could be bad, but you're going to be noticed and seen by the public. And hers, the 28th degree, links to the family, her being seen mostly through her family and her association, her husband. Now, Uranus. So Uranus is very, as we know, unpredictable energy. So the Aquarius risings, y'all already know, typically you guys are trying to figure out how to be unique or how to be an individual in a world that often wants people to be carbon copies of each other. And so in early life, a lot of Aquarius rising struggle with that. But eventually over time, most of you tend to figure out that, hey, I'm here to carry out a very distinct a very distinct mission. I want to approach my life in a way in which I'm seeing the possibility in everything. I am looking at things, not just what they're giving me. I'm thinking about how does this connect to my own understanding. It's not literal energy. Aquarius is logical, but it's not literal, if you know what I mean. So because it's a little bit more experimental in terms of thinking, well, why don't we try this? And why don't we do this? Why are we still doing it like this? We've been doing it like that for 15 years. That's Aquarius Uranus energy. So what the planet is going to, remember, the planet embodies change, making the Aquarius rising person or the Aquarius person seek out life in a way in which they are trying to make some type of difference by seeing what's that's too normal, or no, we need to change that, or we need to in extreme cases, rebellion, right? We need that sometimes. Because sometimes we need somebody just to be that brave voice. And so this is where we will see individuals that need to stand out. So you need to be in fields that are not the status quo, or fields where you are coming up with new ideas and you have to kind of be outside of the box. Let me give some random examples. Someone that's a game coder, right? You make video games or whatever. You have to think in ways that are not always linear. You do have to program it. You have to think in ways that are more inventive in nature. Also with Uranus energy, sometimes people who are into any type of occult you're usually going to see some interesting energy with where Uranus is or where Aquarius is in their chart. You do sometimes see like Uranus does rule astrology. Uranus rules technology though. So tech heads, right? People who are in IT, people who enjoy, the technology side of things. Maybe you're even working behind the scenes in technology because you have Uranus in 12th house. And you're like, I don't want to be the face, but I want to make certain things. I want to code, things of that nature. If Uranus is in a prominent placement in your chart, if Uranus is conjunct your midheaven or you're in Aquarius, you're going to probably see that stand out the most. In Aquarius, you're always going to try to find something that is your calling. These are the people that I am here to deliver a certain type of information to. These are the people that I want to have a shared understanding with. These are the people who I have a cause that I care about. This is what I'm focusing on, right? So that's why Uranus is not about everything. It's not about everybody. It's not about trying to control everybody. Uranus is about trying to carve out space for people who have different thoughts, different opinions, different needs, different ways of thinking, right? So Aquarius midheaven people, I would say like definitely something that requires groups. Right? Groups of people, being in charge of groups of people, especially if you have Saturn in Aquarius, Saturn conjunct your midheaven. Yeah, you might want to do that, right? Being in charge of groups in some way, organizing these groups. You have to know what you're aiming for. That's the thing that's sometimes difficult about Aquarius midheaven. You need to know what your cause is. You need to know what it is that you're trying to do. You need to be the person that's very aware of your role within the group, or sometimes you're going to fall within the group and you're going to be dissatisfied. But I definitely say technology is good for Uranus energy. Anything different. Like sometimes you'll hear of people who are like, yeah, I'm trying to think of like the most unique job that I've ever heard of. Like I heard, some people that research people's mindsets, the different ways in which people think. I forgot what it's called, but I did a chart for someone and I was like, I never heard of that before, right? Like careers that are outside of the box that are different. So Uranus, if you have Uranus as your ruler, or if you have Aquarius rising or something like that, and you're not sure what to do, I would think of what you think you want to do and find the most unique way of doing that, right? If you're interested in medicine, you probably want to go into a type of medicine that's not normal or not the norm. Maybe you're herbal medicine. If you're someone who's like, you write screenplays, you might want to write different, unique type of screenplays. Whatever it is you do, think about what's quirky and interesting about you, and you have to kind of approach it in a different way. And sometimes life is not going to feel streamlined. You have a lot of Aquarius, Uranus energy in your chart, and you're thinking about your career. It is not always going to feel streamlined because you have to find your niche. And then again, you have to kind of figure that out on your own. And an example person that I had for that was Aquarius rising was Condoleezza Rice, and her midheaven. What is her midheaven? It's Scorpio. Okay, so as far as Uranus goes, I think Condoleezza Rice, in terms of at the time, especially being a Black woman Republican and being chose to be a part of the cabinet was a big deal. So whatever party you're a part of, it is not a part of this conversation. But at the time, yes. And again, I know they also had Colin Powell, during the second Bush's, his term as well. And, Dick Cheney. So that's just something just to keep in mind. Is like, it's interesting how that shows up. She also was a woman that is pretty much in control of her own career. I would also say that she doesn't fit norms of what you should have. A lot of times women are judged a lot more harshly of, are they married? Do they have kids? All those things. And she's an Aquarius rising. I think a lot of Aquarius, now that doesn't mean anything, right? There's plenty of Aquarius rising women with children and kids if that's what they want. But she is living life on her own terms. And that's what you're typically going to see with the Aquarius rising people. You have to live life on your own terms. So you do have to think about, what does that mean for your career eventually, right? For her Scorpio midheaven, definitely her gaining associations and power from other people and being prominent because of her ability to have those connections, right? And so she's connected. Scorpio energy tends to be connected to people in terms of having that. Now the sun is performative, okay? So if you're a Leo rising, or if you have the sun conjunct the midheaven, or you have a Leo midheaven, performance is your game. So career where you have to be the best, or you need to be noticed. You have to keep going to be the best. Especially when we think of athletes and where maybe an athlete's sun might be. in the chart. You have to be comfortable with the spotlight and with pressure. If you have sun energy in your chart, eventually you're going to have to do that, especially if it's at the 1st, the 10th houses. You're going to have to figure out how to be comfortable being seen and being noticed and allowing that to really shine. Let me give some examples of what that can mean. Now, when we're talking about like a Leo rising person, I already gave an example with Anthony Bourdain if you were on that one, but Leo risings tend to be noticed for good or for bad. And that does, now what I always tell people is fire burns out though. You need to be careful. You have to understand the pros and cons of any sign, including your own. So fire can start off good, but if Leo isn't able to adapt, if Leo isn't able to change when need to be, you can get stuck in, I'm great, I'm good at this. Look at me, I've done this 15 years ago, right? So you want to be careful because sometimes that can happen. So a lot of times people get really hype about their signs, but you have to keep working on yourself. But a Leo rising person is going to be seen and noticed. Now you want to be careful. What are you being noticed for? You can have someone being noticed for drama or a certain level of being overly dramatic, right? So you don't want to be that type of Leo rising or Leo person. An example though could be a person, say if they have Leo in the cusp or the 10th house or midheaven. Maybe you are the president of a company. You're willing to be seen. You know, you have people that work, you know, under you. And I don't like to use the word under, but you have people that work, you know, there are people that work to support you, but you're the person everyone sees. You're the person comfortable with your image being on the line. Now, vice president would be more the moon, probably more the moon person, the supportive person, right? But performative, sometimes performance can literally be musicians. It literally can be artists. It literally can be people who are athletic. It literally can be people who have a certain type of talent that they like to show. I don't want to pigeonhole talent because there's so many ways in which Leo energy can show out and so many ways talent can show out. Leo is not only sign responsible for that, but Leo is the open presentation of talent. It shows its talent more easily than the Pisces may, because Leo wants to be seen. So when you're thinking of your sun energy, if you are anyway a 1st house Leo, or you have a Leo midheaven, sun conjunct midheaven or something like that, you want to think to yourself, what am I leading? If you're at work, you need to be in charge of something. All right. You need to work your way up to being head of the department or something like that. If you have sun energy near that, you want to be seen. What is your instinct? What is it that you really want to be seen and noticed for? And how can you go about doing that? Because you're going to be dissatisfied until you do that. If you're supposed to be seen and noticed and you're not getting that attention you want, especially if the sun is conjunct the midheaven, then you're not, you know, that is going to affect your confidence, right? So let's say you had a Leo rising that has Taurus on the 10th as the midheaven. So this is a person who's going to be seen and noticed for what they can preserve. This person is the main person. They're the primary person. That maybe they preserve something, right? Maybe they're the person that everyone knows is good at something at work, or maybe they're the person that is the lead professor somewhere of archaeology. I don't know, right? That Leo rising energy is still gonna be there because you are responsive to what you are good at. But Taurus, the midheaven, is gonna make you someone that's cemented. You're resourceful. You like staying in your own niche. You're not trying to do everything. You're staying where you know you're good at something, right? So we can keep that in mind. That's just one example, right? Now, again, I know this, again, when I talk about astrology and famous people, I'm talking about whose astrology matches the best. And sometimes I'm going to talk about controversial people. It is what it is. So O.J. Simpson, for example, has a Leo rising and a V. So O.J. Simpson, you know, again, I'm going to have to talk about controversial people at times in order to talk about the astrology of them. He had a Leo rising. So he has a Leo rising. And so this is important because, as you can see, he doesn't go away. Like, this is not like you would think after being acquitted of something that many people thought you did, you would kind of just lay low, but he has not laid low, right? I think he was a sun in Cancer, but I know that he's a Leo rising. So that Leo rising spotlight is kind of always there on these people, usually. Now, what also is interesting, he has a Taurus midheaven, in terms of creating a name and a role for himself, especially when it came to being very successful in terms of, being an athlete that was, people liked him. People really, really liked him. And he was seen as someone that had a lot of, he wasn't just an athlete that was popular for a moment. He actually was seen, noticed. I think he acted at some point as well. Wasn't he in like a movie or something? People liked him. I think that's very much the Taurus midheaven effect as well. This kind of dependability, this kind of, people except for the people behind the scenes that knew what was happening in his marriage. And he played a good role. You know, people viewed him in a favorable light, especially with him having Venus in the 11th house. That's very helpful. Venus in the 11th house is very helpful in terms of having friends, associates, people in high places, people that'll help you out. Very much so. Not surprising that his friend, what was his name? Al something. Remember the Jeep chase, right? I was a kid when all this was happening with the O.J. Simpson trial. But he's had people in high places helping him out. It's his chart, right? So that's just one way to keep in mind. Now, he does have a moon in Pisces. And again, that's a whole different situation. Like, moon in Pisces is not a bad placement, but moon in the 8th house is intense. And it's a sensitivity to Pisces. So they can be too sensitive, all right? Okay. And then also sensitivity. He has a 25th degree moon. That's an Aries degree. So that moon in Pisces is less sweet and sensitive because the moon's already in the 8th house, causing some, you know, some intensity in terms of the emotional experience. And again, I have this videos about the moon in the 8th house. So that's just something to keep in mind. Maybe I'll do a whole chart thing about him on my other channel at some point. Now, Neptune. All right, Neptune, my Pisces rising people, or Pisces, you know, is an influence in your chart. Well, we already know with the Pisces rising people, it's about really finding where you fit in. It's about finding who you are and telling and saying, like, this is okay. You will feel different a lot, but you won't necessarily always feel as bold and as, you know, have as much audacity as an Aquarius rising might. So Pisces risings do, because of the gentle nature, it is because of the more subdued nature. And sometimes Pisces isn't being passive. It just doesn't care to participate in certain things. It doesn't. If Pisces doesn't feel that something is really necessary and really fulfilling, they don't care. And it's not about, I don't care about being on time. I don't care about doing this way. It's mostly about needing to feel that you are doing something on your own timing and of your own inspiration. And so that's typically what the Pisces first house people are dealing with. You have to learn how to make your world the way you want it, because typically it's not going to be the way that you want it. And also, so when we think of the Pisces ascendant, we then think about, well, what does that mean for the Pisces midheaven people? The people who have Pisces on the midheaven, you do have to find a calling. Not everybody's going to have a calling, and not everybody is here to do it that way anyway. Some people are happy living their life, providing for their family. That is fine for them. They don't want all these spiritual experiences and higher level things. They don't care about that, and they don't have to. But when you have Pisces midheaven, you are going to feel confused for a very long time, probably in terms of your direction, your career, even your image. Going from job to job, or in your jobs, always feeling like, I don't know if this is me. Or people implanting what they believe you are on you when that happens. So it is important to find your way. If you have Pisces in your chart, it's a lot of potential there. You know, I love Pisces energy, especially when I talk about 12th house stuff and Neptune, but you do have to find your way. You do have to find where you fit. Pisces can easily adapt and be mutable because it's mutable, but it can adapt to situations it's not supposed to be a part of. And that's when Pisces gets in trouble, when it's lost. So substance abuse counselor could be a thing for people who have heavy Neptune energy in the chart. Now, I would say that you sometimes see a lot of substance abuse counselors who have had substance abuse, you know, problems in the past. So sometimes you can see people with Pisces energy through experience, through your things that make you feel sensitive. A person who might have had you know, maybe growing up they were a foster child and they now work with foster children or something like that, or they go on to foster children as well. Neptune and Pisces influence in terms of your sensitivities. Even if you don't think you're a sensitive person, you have to think of the most sensitive part of yourself. And that sometimes can help you find your direction in life or the career that you may want to work through. Now, some other examples I can give of Piscean energy, Pisces midheaven, or people who have this heavy influence. Of course, we could say spiritualists, but not everybody wants to be a spiritualist. There are tons of spiritual people that is a part of their beliefs, but they're not making money off of it. Right? It's like religion. There's a lot of people who are religious, but they're not the pastor. They're not the rabbi. They're not the preacher. They're not, you know, they're not the person who's actually in charge of delivering the, you know, you know, every religion calls it something different, but they're not doing the teachings to their congregation or whatever they're called. Sleep analyst. Pisces and Neptune energy really does well with understanding the mind when it's not active and it's not awake. So you have Pisces midheaven, like really working with something that is not literal, really working with things that require you to kind of have to feel and sense and really look underneath the surface. Sometimes remember in Pisces represented also the water sign, so the symbol is the fish. So it also could be people who are interested in like sea creatures or sea or ocean, marine biologists and people like that, because you like to kind of go deep. You have to go, forget the surface. Let me go find. And, people who go and research those types of things as well. But what I can also say is something that's more relevant to some people could be makeup artists, cosmetics, right? Remember, Neptune is about illusion, right? Sometimes Neptune is about making something look like something it's not. That's why this Neptune and Pisces transit we're seeing a lot of alterations to people's appearances, and that becoming more of a trend, and also plastic surgeon, Neptune. So thinking through those as possible indicators as well. Now, Pluto. Pluto and Scorpio. So Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio. Now, if Scorpio is I already started to talk about the rising with Scorpio when I talked about Mars. But with Scorpio, remember the rising, you are responding to life. You are responding to intense situations. You can sometimes handle intense situations more. That is why people may confide in you. If you have any heavy Plutonic energy in your chart, Pluto in the 8th, maybe even Pluto in the 3rd, Pluto is your rising. Anywhere where Pluto can get information from people or absorbs things, people sometimes who have traumatic situations are drawn to, even Pluto in 12th house, right? Are drawn to telling you about their trauma. So sometimes people with heavy scorpionic Pluto energy in the chart, especially with career, you guys can handle that. You can handle that a little bit more than somebody else. A person that has a lot of Leo energy in that chart may not want to deal with trauma. They might not want to talk about trauma. But with Pluto, especially with people who have dealt with it, it's like you find it very healing or therapeutic sometimes to help other people walk through their own. And again, you don't have to do this if you don't want to do this. Sometimes people are like, but I don't want to. Then don't. Right? I don't tell you what to do. I'm just telling you what other people that placement tend to do. Surgeon. So I said plastic surgeon for Neptune because you're trying to craft something to look like something different. But actual surgery is more of a Pluto situation. Even I believe when you're timing surgery, you're supposed to look at the 8th house. Sorcerer. Let's talk spiritually. Spiritually, Pluto people who do more of the transformative magic, people who do more of the spells, who do rituals, who do more of the intense types of putting roots on people, putting spells on people, that is very Pluto. So again, if you're into spirituality and Pluto and you have a Scorpio, now again, it depends. Now, if that was someone's career or they're a spiritualist, you're going to see it elsewhere in the chart. Scorpio midheaven, in my opinion, is not enough to say someone's a spiritual occultist. I would want to see other placements in your chart to show that that's something that you're actually doing. But the point I'm trying to make is it's about transformation. So if you have heavy Pluto in your chart, if you are Scorpio midheaven, change, developing, building something up, making something become a different version of itself is what you're here to do. So sometimes you can even see psychiatry through here. Again, now psychiatry is it requires a lot of time to help someone mentally. So it's not saying that you're going to transform them overnight, but Pluto has patience, right? Now, as far as change, Moon does not really have, right? Like think about the different ways in which the Moon and Pluto both represent change, but different versions of change. Pluto, sometimes you can see detective. You might be into forensics. If you have a Scorpio midheaven, I have a video about the midheaven, but researcher, someone who likes to research deep topics. You want to go down the rabbit hole. Nope, I want all the documents from the past 20 years. That's you guys, you Scorpio midheavens, especially if you're a Virgo sun as well. So, right, you're Virgo sun, or you have it on that chart, you're the type person that you're the researcher. You're supposed to navigate and go deeper and be noticed for kind of taking us to a new place. Even if, let's say you have a musician, you're the one, this could be a person who's maybe their lyrics are more provocative. Maybe they help unlock that kind of part of ourselves where we have to understand our true sexual nature. I'm just giving all the ranges of what that can look like, but the theme is going to be the same, with Pluto being about transformation. You could have a person that does bodybuilding as well. A person who likes to change their body, especially if they have first house placements and Scorpio midheaven. So then you get into this idea that you're being seen for developing yourself, right? For molding yourself and changing yourself into a different version. So there's different ways in which Pluto can act and influence Scorpio, right? So we want to look at the planet and how it affects that midheaven. Saturn and Capricorn. Okay, so when we're thinking of Saturn and Capricorn energy, remember we are dealing with structures that already exist. We're not creating something new. We are using what we already know and we already know to be true. So sometimes I'll see with Saturn energy, well, one with Capricorn first house, people always say a lot of y'all get put into positions earlier on in life. Now, maybe not as much as the actual suns. I've seen them as well. Cardinal suns, especially Libra, Aries, and Capricorn, I've seen achieve really early in life. Meaning, like when you look at like in jobs, like you're the young person who's already a CEO, or you're the young principal, or you're the young lead operator at something. Like, you know what I mean? Like I see that a lot with these cardinal signs. So the thing with Capricorn being the cusp of the first house, I have videos on this. You tend to be seen as more mature, sometimes more than you are. Maybe you are mature. It will depend on the rest of the chart. I know a very mature Capricorn rising, but they're also a Virgo. So they do what they said they were going to do. They're pretty dependable because of the extra earth influence. So again, the rest of the chart's going to make that difference. So I would say political analyst, manager of anything, right? Manager, head of something traditional, following the line of tradition. This could be a person who works in a traditional place. You are the, some places used to call the person who led a school. I think this is in other countries. We don't really do that in America. I think maybe some private schools, but like a headmaster was like the person that was in charge of the school, like something like that, like a person who is in charge of something traditional. Even in religion, maybe like you are part of your, a religious faction where like you are carrying something forward. So that's an example of like, or you're the person who is, you make sure, you work at the courthouse, you make sure all the old documents are preserved or something like that. Like you preserve what has already been established. You preserve things that are already in place. When you have Saturnian or Capricorn energy in the chart, you're trying to think through like, what kind of work do I do? Now we think of Capricorn, midheavens. Yeah, y'all put a lot of pressure on yourself, but you do tend to find a level of success and reputation. So it is important to keep your reputation intact. Now, what I also can say is that, like a judge also could be a good career as well. Let me give an example here. Malcolm X. Malcolm X had a Capricorn rising, okay? But had Saturn in the 10th house of prominence. So do you see how it's important to look at not just the sign, but where that planet that rules it is as well to really get the full picture? Now, unfortunately, his Saturn was in retrograde. Now, unfortunately, okay, let me back up. Don't freak out, because some people are like, but mine's in retrograde. Don't, like with astrology, I always tell people, don't freak out. Just understand it first before you freak out. The point here is we know what happened to him, okay? Like, that's why I'm saying it's a big deal. He was assassinated. So with Malcolm X having his Saturn in retrograde in the 10th house, it's like, yes, you're going to rise to prominence. Yes, you're going to be taken seriously. But unfortunately, in his case, it led to his death, right? So that's just one example. And again, Malcolm X's chart is very interesting. I might do a chart thing with him one day, just showing, some significant placements he had. Okay. So one example of the Saturn Capricorn influence in someone's chart and really seeing how they can be successful, I pulled up Lucille Ball's chart. Now, for many of us, we weren't really around during her prime, but we might have saw reruns like I Love Lucy. So I know when I was a kid, they still ran reruns of I Love Lucy. I'm pretty sure they probably do on some network somewhere. So, but I noticed here she had a Capricorn rising, and so she had a Capricorn rising moon, and she also had Uranus in Capricorn. So this kind of would show like, okay, success in her would come through different means, right? And in a very different way, with Uranus being in Capricorn, of achieving success, even though we know Capricorn typically has a very traditional mode. But once we start to see Capricorn in Uranus, it changes the influence of it slightly. So it's still going to have the Capricorn range in terms of being successful, but it just might not look the same as it would for other people where it's more traditional, like career. Also, she had Saturn in Taurus, and then she had her Virgo midheaven. So I'm not going to interpret this whole chart because this is not the purpose of it. But when I saw this, I said, wait a minute. There's a lot of very earthy energy in her chart.
Okay, not only that, but if we look at the earth houses, she also has nothing in the second house Chiron there, but again, her Chiron in Pisces I think would require further analysis. But on a first glance of her chart, she has Pluto in the sixth house, and she also has in the 10th house Jupiter, which is very favorable, right? And so with that said, I'm looking at this through the lens of like, so not only does she have favorable placements in 6 and Jupiter, Pluto can be a bit obsessive. It can be, so if we look deeper, there's probably been some difficulties she had to go through in terms of like her daily work life. Probably had to adapt a lot over time, especially with the Pluto being, Pluto representing like this drastic change. And we know Gemini being subject to different ideas. So probably having to try a lot of different projects to keep herself afloat. But at the same time, she did not die penniless. A lot of times you'll hear of, especially actors and actresses from the past of like, money being mismanaged or the manager not handling or whatever the case may be. But she had let me see what I looked it up on my other computer. When she died, it says she had an estimated net worth of $40 million, equivalent to 80 million today. And so the estate was split between her children and her husband. So this is according to the Gazette review. So by looking at the chart, I immediately saw all this earth energy and also her having these placements in her houses that are earthly based. The sixth house of her everyday work and the 10th house of her achievement really helps us understand this a little bit better. So really looking at what's on the cusp and seeing how it correlates. What does your first house what does your ascendant sign have in common with your midheaven, right? And that can also help you get a little bit of insight into that as well.
And that's it for this video. I'm really hoping that it helps someone out. Again, this video was to start to look a little bit more at interpretation and looking at how we can connect our chart. We know that the ascendant is super, super important, and we know that the midheaven is important when we are talking about career and our ambitions and our ideal work environment and our public image and all those different things. How do we look at both placements and how do we meet the objective of both? And so that was it for this. I may do a part 2 in the future. Thank you for watching.